And how can a reader or a small business owner, aspiring entrepreneur look at those buckets that you just described, choose the right one for the conversation that they're looking to have, and be better at influencing others with the language that they use?
Yeah, so let me give you a really concrete example. It's one of my favorites. It's really easy tactically to use. A number of years ago, some researchers were interested in something all of us care a lot about, which is how can we increase our influence, right? Who wouldn't want to be more effective in getting others to say yes and support our causes and initiatives and come on board as clients? They actually looked at children. So they went into a local school and asked pre-K kindergartner kids to help do something kids hate doing, which is cleaning up the classroom. Rather than just saying, hey, can you help clean up, like they often might do, for half the kids, they say, hey, can you help clean up the classroom? But for the other half, they try to subtly, but importantly, different approach. Rather than asking the kids to help, they ask those kids to be a helper and clean up the classroom. Now, the difference between help and helper is infinitesimally small, right? It's only a couple of letters. Yet those two letters had a big impact. Kids that were asked to be a helper were about a third more likely to say yes. And you might say, well, that's interesting, but that's just kids and cleaning up a classroom. What does that have to do with adults and more consequential behaviors? And so more recently, some researchers did exactly that. They looked at adults and a more consequential behavior, which is voting. And so they sent letters to a number of adults asking them to turn out to vote. We all know we should vote. We don't necessarily do it. For some folks, the letter said what pitches often say, which is, hey, please go vote. For the others, that pitch had a subtle difference in language. Rather than saying ask them to vote, it asked them to be a voter. Now, again, the difference between vote and voter is quite small. It's only adding one letter at the end, adding an R in this case. Yet it led to about a 12% increase in people's willingness to actually turn out to the polls. And so sure enough, that's interesting, but your listeners might be saying, okay, great, but why? Why is voter more effective than vote? Why is helper more effective than help? And it all comes down to the difference between actions and identities, right? So we all know we should take certain actions. We know we should vote. We know we should clean up. We know we should eat healthy and exercise and all these things. But we're busy. We don't have time to do all these things. But what we care a lot more about than just specific actions is holding desired identities. We all want to see ourselves as smart and like a good citizen and helpful and all these different things. And so if actions become an opportunity to claim desired identities, well, now we're much more likely to take those actions, right? I know I should vote, yes, of course, but suddenly if voting becomes an opportunity to see myself as a voter, well, now I'm more likely to do it. Helping, yeah, I know I should help, but I'm busy, but helping becomes an opportunity to show myself and others that I am a helper. I'm much more likely to do it. And so by shifting from the language of actions to identities, we can make people more likely to take those actions to claim those desired identities.
Our attention spans, of course, right now are shorter than ever, and that's due to social media. Everyone's online all the time. I'm curious, in your opinion, does that change the language that we use to grab attention? We see this, in terms of viral marketing campaigns, viral videos. There are certain ways that people are getting messages out there that are really resonating with the public right now. Can you talk about the science of the language we can use on those platforms that I'm sure small business owners watching would love to know more about?
Yeah, so a few years ago, a big consumer electronics firm asked me to help analyze all their social media language. They were making dozens of posts a week, hundreds of posts a year. Some were getting a lot of attention, others weren't, and they wondered why. And as you noted, this is a big challenge, right? Not just on social media, but in anything. How do we get people's attention, right? Whether it's at the beginning of a presentation, whether it's a cold call, whether it's an email, whether it's the language on social media. Lots of content out there, lots of things competing for attention. What can we do to get that attention? And so I analyzed hundreds, if not thousands, of these social media posts and the language that they used. And I found even controlling for what they were talking about and a variety of other things, a small set of words had a big impact. And these are words like you, you'll, your, what are called second person pronouns. And so we were interested, we wondered, well, why did posts that use the word you get more attention? And what we realized, quite interestingly, is the word you, or you'll, or your, almost acts like a stop sign, right? So imagine you're reading a headline of an email, and it says 5 tips to save money. Okay, I say, okay, that's great. But if it says, hold on, 5 tips to save you money, well, now I pay a little more attention, right? It almost feels like that person is speaking directly to me. Even when it's a broadcast communication, even when it's going out to many, many people, that word you or you'll almost acts like a stop sign that causes us to dial in and pay attention and it gets more engagement on things like social media. But I think there's an important caveat here, because we analyze that same language in a different context. So the company said, wow, that's really useful, thank you. Can you do the same thing, but with our customer support pages, our customer help pages? So you have an issue with your phone or your watch, or your printer's not connecting to your laptop. You go online and you search for pages that provide help. Certain pages are more helpful than others. Why? And so we analyzed the language of those help pages, and we found something interesting. If you is always good, well, it should have led those pages to be more helpful. But in fact, we found the exact opposite. The more the word you showed up on customer support or help pages, the less helpful those consumers found those pages. Because it turns out that language does a few things. Yes, you is really good at getting attention. And so if our goal in the subject line of an email or the beginning of a presentation is to get attention, then words like you and yo and your can be a great tool to do that. But on something like a customer support page, when someone's already given us their attention, that benefit isn't there anymore. But what does happen with you is it almost makes people feel like they're being blamed, like they're responsible or something. When you go to a page and it says, hey, if your phone is broken, you need to reboot it and do these different steps. The customer's sitting there going, well, what do you mean? I didn't break this phone, right? It's your piece of technology. Why is it my fault? And so you can probably see this in your personal life too, right? You often see these accusatory use. Someone gets home and their spouse might say, hey, did you make dinner? Did you walk the dog? And you feel offended. You say, well, hold on, why is it my job to walk the dog or make dinner? What about you? Why didn't you take care of it? And what that person was really saying is, hey, did the dog get a walk? Right? Did dinner get made? Or at the office, did that report get taken care of? They don't mean to suggest blame, but you can suggest fault or blame in a way we don't often intend. And so we need to be really careful about those accusatory use. Yes, you can be a great way to get attention, and so it's good for that. But let's be careful in situations where people might feel like they're at blame or at fault for something, and avoid using you in those contexts.